Hi, everyone. So, last minute podcast idea. Um, my friend Shepard Ambellas on Twitter was looking to talk about something that I just realized I haven't even covered on this channel yet. Something that I'm not so deeply into. I know that you guys know that Dave Zed is, but when it comes to me, I haven't really dived into it because I'm not really sure about anything. But if you're looking for good information, you got to go to IntelliHub. You got to look at Shepard. So we're going to talk about UFOs. Yes. So we're going to bring him on. Hey, bud.
How's it going, Micah?
It's going great, man. How you doing?
Nice. I'm doing great, man.
So I've
Get,
never really talked about UFOs, but your post was kind of engaging because you put out a lot of really good stuff, and I know they censor the shit out of you.
right.
I see this. I see this in real time. I see it happening to you in real time. Um, and you wanted to talk about some UFOs, and I figured I'd give you an hour. So what do you have for us? First of all, for anyone who doesn't know what a UFO is, it's basically an unidentified fly. It's not called a UFO anymore, right?
Yeah, I guess they're calling them like UAPs and
Right,
unidentified aerial threats and stuff like that.
right.
Now, they basically have reclassified them or whatever. So uh, that's a Pentagon thing, probably with them trying to come out with more information on them, or they're planning on running like a Project Blue Beam or something like that.
hmm
um
So
they're
I was under the impression if we're going to talk about Project Bluebeam, all you have to do is look at like the aerial stuff that they do when they like line up like hundreds and hundreds of drones to make patterns in the sky. Is it
Mhm.
going to be something like that? Because I think the original idea for Bluebeam, for Project Bluebeam, for people who don't know what Project Bluebeam is, the original idea for Project Bluebeam was that what was going to happen is at a certain period of time, they were going to project holographically, I think, holographically an image of either Jesus or Muhammad in the sky in order to get people ready for the next step. If you follow the books literally, I don't know if that's evolved since a projection because it's kind of hard to imagine to project something that large. But with all you got to do is look at all these drones that they have. They have like 2,000 drones and they're making like dragons in the sky and stuff. Is that what's going to be happening now?
Well, they can definitely do that, and they have these drones all linked up. Sometimes there's hundreds of them together. The military's done experiments on this. And basically they've dropped these drones out of airplanes and deployed them. They're autonomous AI. Once you set them on their mission, they can carry out the mission that they're programmed to carry out, but any way that they want to carry it out. It's like a hive hive mentality, and they can run them like that. But Operation Project Bluebeam could go into a lot of different territories. They could already be running it. For instance,
So give us a couple scenarios that you think.
part of Operation or Project Bluebeam, like they might have used already, would be say someone says a UFO crashed in Needles, California, or something, and there's all these eyewitnesses. Well, maybe they run it as a weather balloon cover up. That could even be part of that. Maybe they have someone spotted actual government craft somewhere, right? And they know this. So then the Operation Bluebeam could be, they could run in the Inquirer or something. People say they spotted big tall space aliens, at that location or something, to spin it the opposite, right? So
You know,
like,
it's really funny because if you watch Men in Black, they tell you that that's what they do. When they're
mhm,
looking for the news stories, they go and they buy all the junk tabloids because they're like, that's where the real information is.
right. So they can flip it and spin it, and of course one day project things in the skies. They already have this sky mapping technology and holographic 3D hologram technology. We saw Tupac do
on Coachella.
hologram, and that's come a lot farther since then, the technology. So I'm sure they could run it any way they want. They could go to the point or to the extent of they can have government aircraft that look real governmental because you can tell they're built by humans or something. So maybe they mock them up like an alien craft and do an overflight of a city,
Right.
so that it diverts from their project or something. So there's a number of ways I think that they could use that. Ultimately, it might come down to them doing something big, during the time of disclosure or around that time, or there could even be a scenario like, say, Planet X was coming in and these aliens were getting closer and they were starting to interact with Earth a lot more.
Right.
They might come out and try to cover that up, or
Right.
who knows. So that's basically how I think they would use Project Bluebeam, is like any way they could, and they probably already are.
Now, if you're talking about religious people, and I'm talking specifically about Christians, they don't believe that aliens are aliens. They don't believe that they're positive, whether you're talking about the Pleiades or anything really. They believe that they're actually demons. So that's going to be like a big thing if that ever.
Well, and that could be very well true, or something yet to be revealed. But they might play this to different groups, however they want, kind of cater to the different groups using like voice of God technology. They could incorporate into this, so it could play into where they bring it into religions. And who knows how that could go down. I mean, one day they might be telling us some species is on the planet and interacting with us, and the Pope is meeting with them or something,
Right.
and break this in.
So, in your personal thoughts, do you think that there's already aliens living among us? I'm not even just talking about Antarctica or whatever, but is there a race on Earth that is?
I don't know if they come from outer space or the inner Earth or interdimensional, or they're demons or whatever. But I think that there's entities with high technology like that definitely traverse around and operate.
Because one of the biggest things that happened is we'll talk about Area 51, which is one of the obvious ones that you talk about, right? In fact, there was a guy that recently got caught trying to break in, and I think he breached the barrier and they caught him. But one of the things they don't talk about Area 51 is everybody knows the lore. It's like the original story. But what people don't seem to understand is that things were going a certain direction for a while. Then after Roswell, our technology got exponentially better and continued to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So something must have happened there.
Right, like they did come across that technology or had a meeting with these
They got to reverse engineer everything, yeah.
Reverse engineered, something like that. They say the Nazis were, working with these things, or reverse engineering. Also, a lot of these militaries are going around the world in all these supposed wars, and they're finding high technology, ancient tablets, things that are really putting the pieces together, for them, based on what the elites have already collected through the Smithsonian and stuff, and they're able to paint like a really good picture.
Right. For people who don't understand, the Smithsonian is known for destroying artifacts. It's well known that they've destroyed many giant bones. It's well known that there's certain animals that have come out that they've just destroyed. They lose things all the time. They're not there to give you the truth when they talk about the ancients. So what is your thought on Nibiru?
I think that there's validity to that story, and I don't know if it's been twisted or turned, or if they know the exact time frame or whatever, but it seems to have validity and match up with things in history and all across every civilization. And in every continent, and just like pretty much every history and story in history. So
the other thing that you see too is that in like ancient Egyptians and ancient, let's say pre-Mexican areas and such all over the world, you'll see the Anunnakis with like a bird head, or not even just a bird head, but like a reptile head. And you'll see them wearing a watch, and you'll always see them carrying a bag. Do you have any thoughts on what those are?
yeah, maybe like a watch, or like an Apple phone watch or whatever, and then kind of like the Star Trek communicator, and then also the bag. I think is something like the nuclear football, to where that's symbolizing someone in high power with that handbag, because they're carrying like a nuclear football or some type of self-destruct device, or
Right. Now
ship predator.
there's talk about, and what you guys will find if you guys do some deeper research is you'll find that at periods of time certain nuclear power plants magically just turned off, or certain things had just accidentally turned off, and there's a thought that these are aliens that have access to remote. Basically, they have been keeping us from eliminating ourselves. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, there's speculation and talk of that. Excuse me. I think that when you get into topics like that, it's hard to know what's fully real and what's not, and what but I think that a general consensus, like after hearing all these stories and all these people in the military and everything, surely there's some type of interaction, communication with these things. I've interviewed someone who worked at Area 2, and
can you explain what Area 2 is for people who don't know?
I believe it's north of Area 51, and I believe it's called Creech, or around there, and there's a weapons storage facility there, and there's rumors and stories that come out of there of like creatures and Catman, and just like weird genetic type stuff. So there was a guy, Charles Hall, who encountered some tall grays in the desert around that area. And then there's also a missing YouTuber named Kenny Veach, who went off hiking in that area, and they never found him, which is interesting. So I don't know. I think that look at these latest cattle mutilations they had down in Texas again, and they're going on and they're saying like, oh, this stuff looks surgically removed, but yet there's no blood, but yet there's no footprints. And then you listen to the story and it's like, okay, there's no trace of footprints, tire prints, no blood. And then by the end of the news story, they're like, well, we're thinking it's some kind of a cultist or something, but you got no blood, you got certain organs removed, no tire tracks, no footprints, and it's just in precision, and it's like all over the state of Texas and other states.
Right.
And this is
a lot of people in occult practices, and the word occult just means hidden. So when I say occult, I'm talking about what normal people think the word occult means, as opposed to what it truly is. Right. So what normal people think that occult means. Fluids, and this goes back to like Crowley and even further back than that. Fluids are a big thing. That's why blood is so important. Semen, things like that, they're so important in ritualistic things like that. That if there's no blood, that right away, that tells me that that's not a cult. Right away.
Right. And I was kind of thinking the same thing, and also just the lack of evidence of tire tracks or anything, and they say it's like baffling authorities, it's not, but then in their other breath they're like trying to blame it on Satanists or something, right. Or you know what I mean. So I find that bizarre. Now could it be governmental? Could it be aliens? Could that even be some type of psyop that's part of Project Bluebeam? Yes, it could be.
I mean, at this stage of the game, we can't tell if something is an alien entity or if it's a chimera that was created on Earth.
Or you're right, or a demon, or like,
what are your thoughts on the Montauk Monster?
I haven't studied much on that directly, but I got into the Dogman and Bigfoot and stuff like that.
You think those are possibilities?
Well, I think that I was listening to someone talk about this. They got asked a question about do they think Dogman is genetically engineered? And, after I've listened to, I'm going to say over 500 Dogman encounters stories now from like supposed people that claim, and they all sound like legit pretty much. And I think at the end of the day, these things were probably always here, but they've somehow learned how to train them for the military or raise them from birth or modify them and possibly somehow use them as base security with plausible deniability or something like that. So like they can have these things going around in like they could have an underground alien encampment, for instance, like that.
Well, we know that they have cities underground. We know Denver under,
like in a state park or a wildlife preserve, that there's an alien encampment that the government's aware of, and that's why they put it in a wildlife preserve, and that's why you'll get arrested if you go near these places.
What's interesting?
Someone strays into there, maybe they have a creature like this kind of scare people out of there, but it can get violent or something, and that would be like plausible deniability. Like no one would believe the people, it'd just be like a crazy way to keep people out of the area. They talk about like infrasound, which there's also military infrasound treatments, which are like active denial systems for base entry. And it's similar to the Dogman and Bigfoot, supposedly. So it makes me wonder, like, how, that's all connected. But oftentimes there's military personnel spotted near Dogman or something of that nature.
Well, it's interesting, too, because people don't realize that if you condensed the entire world into how Manhattan is structured with the living, with the apartments, basically, you could fit the whole world in Alaska.
Wow.
People don't seem to really realize that.
There's so much.
The idea that we're overpopulated is bullshit. The idea that we're overpopulated comes from the fact that people coordinate and live in major cities and along the seaboard. That's what they do. They live near the water or they live in major cities. There is so much land. And my point is bringing it to this. If you've ever seen a map of the cave system in America, and then you superimpose a map of missing people on top of it, they lie. So we have so much empty space, people don't know what to do with. And you have these cave systems where these creatures could definitely just be hiding. I mean, and the other thing, too, is these underground cities that they have, you don't understand. They have like supersonic trains.
Maybe they allow these things to come up and hunt. Like the predator or something. I don't know. Maybe maybe there's some kind of deal. Maybe that's what a wildlife preserve is. Maybe, who knows? I think the Department of the Interior is somehow involved in stuff like that, and it somehow ties into like this underground bases, the trains, the Archuleta Mesa, that kind of stuff, and the UFOs and the black projects and the secret space. It somehow all dovetails.
So what have you found in your own research that you wanted to basically talk about today regarding UFOs?
Well, I've had encounters. I went on the confessionals with Tony Merkel, and I talked publicly about some of my UFO encounters for the first time on there. And, I thought I could talk about some of that, and that ultimately led me to research more over my life and stuff, knowing that I've seen stuff. I don't necessarily know if it's what I saw was alien or governmental or demonic, but I'm leaning toward probably not government.
I mean, the idea too is
like a joint, because there was military, there was a big Navy base nearby that supposedly had a bunch of UFO and USO activity and stuff, and that kind of goes into the story and what I found out later, and like this area I lived in. But I can I'll give kind of a shorter version of some of these things, and then maybe we can get into it sometime too. But what originally got me into the UFO subject was I lived in Gulf Breeze, Florida when I was younger, maybe like in like seventh grade or something like that. And right when I lived there, it was known that there was this UFO. It was like on Unsolved Mysteries, and they talked about the Gulf Breeze UFO and this guy that took pictures of it, and it was a big debacle. So my dad and I would talk about UFOs and kind of wonder if they're real. And my dad said he saw some lights and some planes chasing it one time, but that never really proves anything when you see like these lights at a distance and anything like that. But if you've had some really super close encounters, then it gets like pretty weird, So in Washington State, I moved to this new area, and it was it was outside of the city, in Kitsap County, and pretty wooded area on the peninsula near the Puget Sound. It had like houses that each house had their own lot, and there was like lots that didn't have houses on them, so there was a lot of woods around, and then houses, and then woods, and they might get like 3 houses in a row. So it was kind of like country-ish land and whatnot. And when I moved into the area, my dad had said he was talking to the painter, and the painter's daughter had seen a UFO with her friends. And he mentioned that, and we were kind of like, wow, that's weird, because we used to talk about UFOs and whatnot. So I didn't really pay any attention to that or anything. And over the years, like probably a little bit of time went by, maybe like a year or more or something like that. I was probably like 14, 15 years old. And I guess this would have been like in the early to mid 90s. And I was sleeping. I woke up one night, and my blinds were open on my window, and you could see the tree outside in my yard, which, it was probably like 15, 20 feet away or something like that, from where I was inside. And this blue light, like I'm going to say like a 2 to 3 foot around, almost like a probe, like when I first saw it, I go like, oh my God, that's a UFO. And I like sat up, and it came in front of that tree, and then I got hit with this blue light, and it paralyzed me into like a block of ice, almost like I was freaking out and like trying to move, and it was like the scariest thing ever. But like it would be like being in a block of ice, and you can't even twitch a muscle or yell or do anything, but you're just like freaking out, right? And there's just nothing you can even move or do. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't really remember anything. And then I was like so scared. I went into my parents' room and I'm like, man, I'm going to sleep in here on the floor because I'm like that terrified, even at that age, which was like really bizarre.
How close did it come to you?
What's that?
How close did it come to you, the blue light?
It was probably about 4 to 5 feet outside my window, and I was probably like, my head was probably like 8 feet from the window. So it wasn't very far.
Like you could tell the difference between a helicopter blue light and that, right?
Well, and when I first saw it, I said, that's a UFO. But then in my mind, but then it moved over. So this thing was physical. Like if I think back on it, it was physical, but it was small, and it was small enough to move in between that tree and me. You know what I mean? So like in the wall of my place. So I would, that's how I could kind of scale it, like the size of it. So like it was like probably like 2 to 3 feet in diameter.
How long was it outside your window?
That all took place within probably like a 3-second period, and then that's all I can remember is
But it feels like forever.
Like paralyzed and was fighting it, and then I feel like who knows what happened after that. And it scared me so bad as to where I was freaking out, and I slept on my parents' floor, and then I had to go to school the next morning, and so that was kind of like the first like weird thing. And then me and my friend, like later, I guess I was like 16, 17. We were driving back from town, and we were going around this one corner in the car, sweeping corner with trees everywhere. And it was at night, and we saw this flash, like to our left. And we both looked, because I seen him look too. And it was real bright, and is what it ended up being. The flash was because there was this big ball of light that was moving above the trees, and where the angle we were at, the trees were right there off the side of the road, and a lot of them. So whenever the light, it was so bright, when it would, my car was moving too. So the light would come through the trees, it would look like a strobe light almost. And so as we turned the corner, all of a sudden that all disappeared. And the next thing you know, like we're right in front of us, we look up because it got like super bright. And that thing, that huge spherical shaped ball of light, like a UFO, but you could not see any detail. It was like just lit up. It was probably like 100 feet above us. And it was actually going the exact same direction as my car now. And that was like a 2 or 3 mile straightaway of road. And I was probably going about 60. And it was probably going about 120. And it, was kind of pulling away from us. I think I might have even sped up a little bit or something, but it eventually went over like a tree line. Mm-hmm. And so that was like weird. And, my friend was with me. So like, it wasn't like I just saw that. So that happened. And then, there was other stories, like my friend's dad had these lights swirl around in the back of his truck one morning on the way to work. And he's like, what's that? And he's like, am I getting pulled over? Because they were blue lights. And he pulls over, and he's like, what? That's like in the back of my truck. And they were swirling, and it just like kind of freaked him out. And it was so early in the morning, it was like dark out, that and he had just left the house, that he just went to work like normal. But that's like the story on that. And then
those are called orbs, I believe, right?
Yeah, something like that he saw, and they were like, racing around.
For people who don't know what orbs are, it's basically when you do a seance, for example, you try and generate something called ectoplasm, which is not invented by the Ghostbusters. It's a real thing, and it's a physical manifestation of spirit. Wavy shadows, smoke, even. Sometimes they're orbs, literally. That's why they're called orbs. Sometimes they're different colors, but they're usually entities. That's what they are. From all the research that I've done on it, that's what they basically are.
So it turns out right at about that area that he saw those, there was this old naval facility that became privately owned. Like the Navy supposedly got out of there and supposedly sold it to a civilian. And it was a degaussing station where they demagnetized ships supposedly. But like I checked into this later, and like I don't think it was that, and I think they had something else going on. And so that same family, my friend Roy and his sister, that was his dad that had that happen. And so his sister, his mom, and him drove to town, and they came back one night, and a blue light filled their car up around that same area. Then they don't remember much, and then they're pulling up the driveway to their house, and they said it was like 1:30 at night, and they left at like 9:30 or something, you know. So it was like real weird, and they all kind of tell the story. So then it got real weird when I was with one of my friends one day in like 1995, and that we were driving. My friend Roy, that had that happen to him, or not my friend Roy, my friend Roy, and my friend Jeremiah, who was previously with me, who saw that big spherical light in the car. So we passed him on the road, going down this hill, and he waved, and we waved at him, and he was previously with me, and I was with my friend Roy. Now, apparently at that time he saw this thing and we didn't see it yet. And so like we kept driving for like a mile and then turned, and now I'm going down this one road, and all of a sudden coming over the road, I see a helicopter, and I didn't look at it yet, but that's what my mind thought. And then my mind thought, dang, that must be one of those like Chinook helicopters, because that thing is big. Then at like the same time me and my friend looked, because it was like we both moved our heads like, wow, you know, like I noticed he looked at the same time, and we both literally were like, that's it. Because we had seen so much activity in this area, and we were all friends, that us three, my friend Roy, Jeremiah, and I, decided we were going to go toward something if we saw it next time, because Roy also had another encounter with his friend Russell, and so we knew something was going on. So we said, okay, well, we're going to get close to whatever. So I end up hitting the gas, and Roy's like, oh shit, you know, and we get like closer up on this thing, and then we realize it's like bigger than a half mile across.
Wow.
And it's so big as to it's dusk out. This thing starts, the tip of it starts coming across the road. That's what we thought was like, I thought was a helicopter at first, but it was like the tip of this huge ship. And there's like trees on each side, like evergreen trees, you know, and I'm driving down this 2-lane road, and all of a sudden it just keeps going, like the ship like this, right? And it's covered across the whole road, and you can't see either end, and it just keeps feeding itself like this. And then it gets to like this midsection where there was like this elliptical, like oval shaped milky orange bubble, and then it kept going, you know, and then like the end eventually came, and then we eventually went down to the beach and saw this thing over the city of Seattle and how big it was. That's how I was kind of able to scale it. And my friend saw it when we waved at him when he was in another car. And so all of our stories corroborated, and I've met other people since that have seen that and stuff. So it's like bizarre, but I saw all the detail on it, and it looked it looked like beat up. It looked like a super advanced, but like hostile, but like scorched and beat up and burnt, like it had been going in and out of atmospheres and oceans or something. And it just looked creepy as hell, and it was huge. I mean, it was just, you couldn't even see either end of it at one point.
And then what happened? Did it just disappear?
Well, it went behind the trees. So like we raced down, I drove probably 2-3 more miles down to the beach, and we're like, where is it? Where is it? And all of a sudden we see it over the city of Seattle, over skyscrapers in the main city. You know, like here's some skyscrapers, like my hand, like the city center, and this thing's bigger than like the city center of Seattle, you know. So I can definitely say it's bigger than a half mile. And
we all had the same story.
Yeah, and we all saw detail. So like what the weird thing is, so later that day, so I was with Roy, and because he was in my car, and so we go to my friend Jeremiah's house later that day, and we're like pulling up his driveway, and I'm already sticking my head out the window, and I'm yelling, Jeremiah, Jeremiah, guess what? And he's like, I know, I saw it too, a UFO. And I didn't even say anything, and he said that, and Roy witnessed that, and then we all started talking, and we talked about it for days after, and like it was like insane. But yeah, so on the news in Seattle that night, they said like, stay tuned for the UFO photo of the night or something, and they kept doing this shit, and then they got to the end of the broadcast and they never showed anything, like Men in Black called them or showed up or something, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know, but it ended up going over Mount Rainier. I also ended up somehow looking this up like 15 years later on the internet. Like I used to know the exact date of this, and I made it like a thing that I remembered. And I kind of know the date, but I looked into this one time, and I found literally on the exact date that I remembered it being, like back in the day when I checked on it, there was like encounters that I found that popped up, and they talked about it. So like in Washington State, like other people saw this, and I've also since met people that were in that town that I was in that saw it, and like said the same thing as I did, but they were in different parts of the town. So what I found out later, like 5-6 years ago, I realized that because of where I saw that spherical one when I went around the corner one time in the car, and then that second one that I saw that was big, I realized in my head, because of I know the layout of that area, I realized that was essentially on the same flight path. So I pulled up a map, and it was literally exactly on the same flight path, and they were moving the exact same way and everything, even though those were two separate. So I said, okay, what would be the chances that someone now can identify this as probably a flight path, because you got like an eyewitness like me who's seen multiple UFOs in the same area and realized now that they're flying in. And I said, well, this would be weird if this line led to the naval submarine base Banger that they say these USOs were. There was like local stories about this shit. And I'm like, okay. So I follow this line over of exactly where these two UFOs flew. And I go over to the west without moving on Google Earth, without even moving like 20 feet. like literally just going perfectly straight over, and I go over like 20 miles, and it literally hits dead center in the middle of where the naval submarine base Banger is.
Wow.
Mhm.
What do you think these things are? Why do they come here? And the other thing too is I want to share with people is people talk about how they
If they are involved in that military like that, either it's military craft or it's a joint program like we've heard about before, or some kind of secret space force program, or there's exchange programs or something like that. I would have to assume. I don't know for sure that they came from that base, but like think about it. If it's rare enough to have close encounters like that, let alone with multiple people, let alone to where we know exactly within like a 20-foot span of where these things flew in what direction, and to trace it back and it ends up right on that military base is insane.
people don't seem to understand is that they hover, and then sometimes they just from a complete standstill will just shoot up into the air 30,000 feet, and it's because these entities or these things they have mastered anti-gravity, which
Mhm.
if you've ever heard me talk, guys who are listening and girls, talk with Dave Zed about who cracked it, um, even though it's not allowed to be produced. That's what they basically use. And the other thing too is some of these crafts are interdimensional. That's why they're there 1 second and then they split because they just
Out.
they just shift their vibration. They're interdimensional. People don't understand when you're talking about other dimensions. It's not like you fly off into the ether to go to another dimension. That's not what it is. Everything is simultaneously happening here. This is vibrating at the same frequency as I'm vibrating. That's why it's together. But there's other things vibrating at different frequencies because everything is energy. Everything is energy. So things are vibrating at different frequencies. You can't see them. You can't be affected by them, but
Right.
sometimes they can pop in.
Yep, I think so. I think a lot of these things can pop in and out like that. But there's a lot of video lately, and a lot of these encounters of these UFOs are coming out in these pill-shaped ones, these tic-tac-shaped ones. Even someone I know has seen one. I also interviewed a guy who works at a nuclear facility who saw one, or his security team did, on the same day that this balloon was flying by, as a matter of fact, which is weird. So those balloons might somehow tie in to this. But yeah, I mean, it could be getting weird here in the future, whether it's government craft and they're going to kind of start showing them, or like the aliens are here. I don't know.
Right, because the thing is that, and I tell people this all the time, like what you think is the most cutting edge in science or in technology is like what they're showing you now that is the most cutting edge. They're 30 years ahead of that in the black rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're just showing you now is just they release it slowly to people. They're not going to show this kind of crazy technology, and it's possible that it could be either or. And people seem to forget. People who aren't even old enough, you seem to forget that Jimmy Carter, the president. I don't care what you think about him, and I'm not here to talk about politics. But Jimmy Carter famously talked about his UFO experience, and then he was elected president. This is not a unnatural phenomena. This is something real. These are interdimensional things that come into our reality, and then they easily just shoot back out. They just shift their vibration, and then suddenly you can't see them. Because remember, our eyes and our ears only see about 1% of what's actually there.
I
If
think
you see 100%, you wouldn't be able to function.
I think they can cloak too, maybe, and all sorts of stuff. So they could be around a lot more even, and people just don't realize it. But yeah, so like after having those type of encounters, and then actually kind of reading and studying about encounters and stuff over the years, I realized that that's pretty rare to have had that many close encounters and have been paralyzed, and it's to some rarity. So I decided to kind of start talking about it. I might, like I've already pretty much have put together a book on it. I was thinking about, maybe trying to finish the book and just because like I could lay this all out on maps and kind of tell in detail what I was talking about. I went into a little more detail on the confessionals, and because we spent a lot more time, but basically, like, if I could present pictures and evidence with this military base, with that degaussing station that was supposedly there previously, and some of the things I've checked into on that, it starts getting real interesting. And then bringing other witnesses in, and what they're saying to some of my friends and stuff.
Yeah. Wow, man. So how many encounters have you had total?
I've had one where I got paralyzed, and then I had the spherical one, and then the big one, and then I've also had some more sightings, but they were further out. I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska at one point when I was younger, and one evening it was like dusk. This object was coming in, and it like started to plane up, like it was stopping itself from crashing, but it wasn't like a meteor. It was like something. And the captain's like, "Oh fuck, it's gonna hit the water," and it was only like a mile away, and I thought like a tidal wave was gonna come or something. The shit just went straight into the water with no splash, nothing. So it was like pretty wild, that. So like I saw that, and then some more distant stuff. I had some really crazy encounters in Sedona with a bunch of people one day that I could talk about sometime. That's like a whole story within itself. And we went up to like look for these vortexes because we heard about it on the internet, and we ended up having this crazy like UFO type encounter at a close range, or some type of encounter. The sound was coming out of the mountain, and I'm gonna say I was the most composed out of everyone. I mean, it was like a movie. Like some people I was with, they were running down the hillside like, "Oh fuck," like it was like chaotic scene because all this shit started breaking loose.
Have you ever seen the movie Arrival?
Yeah, a long time ago.
What did you think of it? How accurate do you think that would probably be?
I can't totally remember it, but
it's the one where it was those things that were hanging there, and then they had anti-gravity that pulled them up, and there were the aliens, and they had to learn how to communicate with the drawings and everything.
That was a good movie, from what I remember. I need to go back and rewatch that, but that's fascinating. I would say there's probably a bunch of different.
I guess my question is, Hollywood gets directives from the CIA, and they embed things. We talk about revelation of the method, right? We talk about that all the time. Do you think they're putting, like, when it comes to that kind of stuff, do you think they're releasing stuff? Like, do you think this is how they're showing us?
Yeah, I think so, and I think they could hide stuff in it. I think you could almost have like a predator type alien species that could be going around. You could have like these tall grays. I think there could be some really crazy shit going on, like in that world. And who knows how they're going to cover that up or release what. But if there's truly infinite planets and worlds out there, and we haven't even explored our own oceans, or unfold, or hollow earth, or flat earth, or whatever it is, then
it's the whole thing. Like, it doesn't have to come from all the way out there.
It's
interdimensional. It's right here already.
They're finding so many new species every day of things and stuff. It's like, well, why couldn't there be all of this stuff? So, that's the kind of the point where I'm at. Is it is weird that military base was there. I heard rumors about it, that other base was in the area where those swirling lights were, and how that flight path between me seeing those two objects and being able to determine that's probably a flight path, and it it literally pointing right to that base, I'm gonna go with wow, there's something going on there, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, man. Damn. So have you been sharing this stuff you've been doing like the podcast circuit and like, are you
Just
kind of
only the confessionals, and then I'm supposed to go on like UFO Chronicles later this month, but like no one's really bid on this. I'm surprised because honestly, if I told all this in detail and really mapped it out, it might be one of the most mapped out like UFO things. I even have other witnesses that could say this, tell their stories.
You still talk to them, right?
Yeah, it's almost like, well, one of them I don't, but I could probably get in touch with. But yeah, the other person I just talked to about a year ago, and we were like saying the same thing. I mean, I was like, well, how big is this thing? Like, what did it look like? Like what were you seeing? Because this guy that I was talking to wasn't the guy that was with me. It was the other guy, right? So he was with his girlfriend driving, and they saw it from a different vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to, I'm safely able to say this thing was bigger than like a half mile across, and
just for the record, you were in like South Florida, and you moved as far across the country as you could to North Washington State. Like you don't get further than that,
right?
And you saw this happen in both areas,
right? That's weird too. Well, in Florida, I didn't really see anything. My dad did, but there was that for some reason we happened to live in this area where there was this big UFO story going around, and I don't know if that's just by chance or whatever, or if that's also might have been what got me kind of interested in like this kind of stuff. But when you have something like this happen and it's not just like a light in the sky, like a lot of people say like, oh, I saw a UFO, it was like a light in the sky. But like when you're seeing like metal on the object and like architecture and like compartments and like sections, it looked like Battlestar Galactica or something, but like it looked like Sigourney Weaver aliens or something. Like it was crazy.
Wow, man. That is freaking crazy, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it,
man,
for sharing this. So are you putting any of this on IntelliHub?
I think I might have a little bit, but I probably will be doing more because I'm gonna try to start talking about it a little more because I'm working toward probably I'm gonna release that book. I mean, it's actually an amazing story. I'm just trying to determine like how I'm gonna do it or whatever. I basically know what I want to do. I just got to put the rest of the book together because I want maps and diagrams.
People have like one experience and it changes their life. You've had multiple.
Right. Yeah.
So, man, just let everybody know where they can find you and how to support you.
My website is intellihub.news, also atn.live, the Ambellas Talk Network. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, and Rockfan, at Shepard Ambellas on Twitter, social media, all those platforms. PayPal me, Shepard Ambellas. All the links are in the description of my videos, and you can click through the banners on IntelliHub. But please make a pledge and offer support. I do in-depth journalism on lots of great topics, including I've now did this analysis on Epstein and believe he's still alive. I don't know if you saw that one, but I got into
I'll check it out though. That sounds
crazy. I did some real analysis with the Epstein body that they show in the mainstream media when they show his death. So yeah, check that out. So yeah, at Shepard Ambellas, support my work. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Shepard, man. I'll have you back on soon.
All right, Micah. I appreciate it. Awesome.
Take care, man.